Welcome to SciShow Tangents. It's the lightly competitive science knowledge showcase. I'm your host, Hank Green. And joining this week, as always, is science expert and Forbes 30 Under 30 education luminary, Sari Riley.
Hello.
And also, a resident everyman, Sam Schultz.
Hi. The "and also" is so dismissive.
And also...
And who cares?
And this other man.
And more importantly, a resident everyman. What about that,
I like
Sam?
that better. Can we change the show flow to say that?
Yeah. Number one guest of the show. Top of the charts. It's Sam Schultz.
You hurt me even worse. I'm a permanent guest.
I don't know. I say I'm the host, so you guys are the guests.
I guess that's true. We're your panel.
That's how it works. Yeah, my panel. Can I ask you a question, panel?
Uh-huh.
Sure.
So, if and when they invent a technology to do instantaneous transportation of your body to a new place, but what actually is happening is your body is being recreated in that new place, and the body that exists here is being destroyed. And if you had just not destroyed that body, then there would have been two of you. How are you feeling about using that technology?
This is just something I always have such a problem with on Star Trek, because they didn't have to say that that's what happens, right?
Do they say that that's what happens?
Basically, because there's two Rikers, you know? There's two Rikers.
Is there a moment where there's two Rikers because of the transporter?
One Riker's evil and he escapes into space. And he's causing all kinds of mischief out there. I would be okay with it. I wouldn't be afraid of teleporting. I would just try not to think about it too hard. But when you think about it, it's like, then what are we doing here? Why? But I guess you have to destroy one of you. So I would live with it. Because going anywhere instantly would be great.
Because you want to get to Hawaii without having to take the whole plane?
Oh, please. I would love to. I hate flying in planes more than I hate being molecularly deconstructed. What if you knew that at the last minute when you were being deconstructed, you were like, "Blah!" and it hurt so bad, but you never got to know how bad it hurt?
Yeah, at what point does your consciousness transfer?
Well, the consciousness doesn't transfer. It's just reconstructed entirely perfectly. You wouldn't notice a break in consciousness in the same way that you don't notice a break in consciousness when you wake up after you go to sleep.
But you are a new guy.
But you're new.
Like, I'm of the impression that you can totally do this because it happens every night anyway. Like, every night I go to bed, my consciousness ceases. I am no longer me. And then I wake back up and I'm me again. And I'm like, well, I have the same song in my head as I did when I went to sleep. Huh.
So it's just like falling asleep, but then you wake up in Hawaii.
And you know that the you who fell asleep is dead now.
Yeah, that would be the hard part, I think, is knowing that. But I feel like in some way, isn't past me already dead? All my skin cells have sloughed off. I don't know. Like, 5-year-old Sari was so different than current Sari. Yeah. Isn't she teleported away in some way?
Yes, consciousness is an illusion and 5-year-old Sari is dead.
I feel like even more immediately, 1 second ago, Sam.
Yeah, I've forgotten everything about myself. Last week, Sari, I'm new me, new week, new me. That's what I always say.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been around for so long now. I've forgotten almost everything that's ever happened to me, and I feel like all those people who had those experiences are dead.
Well, would you do it? Would you be okay with it, Hank?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If it got me to Hawaii real quick, so we're all on the same page. We would murder ourselves.
How can you? I don't know. I don't know. I guess every now and then I'd be sitting in bed at night and think, dear God, what have I done? And all of humanity would think the same thing. And then we'd all just go to sleep. Wake up the next day.
That's the real power of humans. Yeah. We're like, boy, this seems wrong. And yet we do it anyway.
Honk shoe. Time to go to bed.
And I'll eat my chicken nuggets and then I'll do all my other human things.
I can't wait till they can atom by atom reconstruct a chicken so that I can eat it without guilt.
That's going to be the best.
They just do all of it except for the head.
Yeah. But will you, like, everybody will always be eating the same chicken nugget every day? That'll be weird.
I'll eat the same chicken nugget. Yeah, sure. That doesn't bother me at all. That's the situation with the lab-grown meat. It's just the same cell over and over again.
Yes, that's true.
Gross. But good. But bad? But don't ban it for no reason. That's my thing.
Just weird. Let's just settle on weird.
Yeah, let's just let people decide whether or not they want to eat that.
Eat that cell. Eat that cell.
I totally want to eat that cell.
Eat that cell.
I'd love to eat the cell.
Cell is yummy.
Every week here on SciShow Tangents, we get together to try to one-up, amaze, and delight each other with science facts. And then we also try to stay on topic. But I have messed that up today. Our panelists are playing for glory and for Hank Bucks, which I'll be awarding as we play. And at the end of the episode, one of them will be crowned the winner. But as always, we must introduce this week's science topic with the traditional science poem. This week from Sam.
For this poem, I have a little special surprise in the form of a special guest.
Oh.
I'd like you to meet Clone Sam. Hi, Clone Sam. So, because I've gotten really busy lately, so I made this clone of myself to take over all of my tangents responsibilities. And one way that we're going to sort of pass the baton is we're going to present this poem about cloning together. Are you ready, Clone Sam? I'm ready, regular Sam. All right. You might think you're special, but you're not, because you're just made up of a lot of little codes in DNA that we can read and then relay to stem cells, which then proceed to make a new you. Yes, indeed. Someone who's almost basically you to do the stuff you don't want to do, like host a science comedy show, or do the dishes and shovel snow, or to harvest organs from when you get old. Yes, clones are great. It's you. All right, twofold. Well, I'll leave you guys to it. Nice hosting a podcast with you. What was that part about the... It's been great to know you. The organs? See you later. Bye, everybody. Okay.
Bye.
Hi, Clone Sam.
No, that was the regular one.
Oh, shoot.
Hi, everybody. That was our poem. Do you think I need to worry about the organ thing?
I don't know. You could probably go get him right now. Track him down. And
he ran really fast out of the room.
Did he? Well,
Yeah.
Look.
Yeah.
You can take over his whole life. All you have to do is murder him in his sleep.
That's a really good point. Okay, that's what I'll do.
You could take his organs, in fact.
Yeah.
It's a race for who gets
Somebody's
the organs.
taking somebody's organs.
Organ race.
Well, it's nice to be here. I listened to every episode 50 times, so I know everything about
Great.
Sam's life in the show.
You are way ahead of us.
Yeah, I know more than he did. That's for damn sure.
So the topic of the day is cloning. But before we dive in, we're going to take a short break, then be back to define what the heck that is. So Zari, I feel like we can define what cloning is. To me, it's just like it's when that you create a second, either artificially or naturally, organism that has the exact same DNA. Well, not exact same, but like same DNA. Like there's no like genomic mixing going on. The offspring is the same as the parent.
Yeah, the genetic information is the same. And I think that's it. And in colloquial use, cloning just means copying. So if you like have a voice clone or a clone of a website, it's just copying. But yeah, biologically speaking, cloning is genetic copies. And there are lots of ways that happens in nature. And then there are lots of ways, I guess a few ways, many fewer ways that we humans have figured out how to do it. Plants use cloning all the time. It's a natural form of reproduction. And some plants form clonal colonies of themselves. So Pando, those aspen trees, a classic example of a giant clonal colony where they share
Pando's like
the
a
same...
specific thing, right? Is that right?
Yeah. So it's like technically one tree. It's a quaking aspen tree, but there are many different stems that appear like different trees. Like if you looked in the environment with our human eyes and looked at it, it'd be like, oh, that's a forest. That's a bunch of trees. That's like tens of thousands of trees. But
it's just one pando.
It's one pando. It's one guy. All connected.
This is one guy. Is it a little bit weird that Pando has a name? Because most of the time when there's a forest, I don't call it a name. I call it the something forest or the something national forest more commonly in the US. Yeah. But I don't usually like come up and be like, this is Pando, the forest.
Behold, Pando.
This is like a man's name.
Well, I think it's because he's a guy. A forest is a lot of different guys, and you wouldn't like it if someone walked up to you and all your buddies and was like, oh, that's Hank over there. But if you and a bunch of clones of you were all joined,
we're all connected by our fingertips,
I'd be like, oh, that's Hank.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that's horrible.
We are Hank.
Was there a point? Like, they must have thought he was it was whatever was just like a forest. Was there one day where they were like, huh?
Wait a second.
You are Pando. Or what?
That's a great question.
I
don't know. I didn't look it up.
About Pando?
I didn't look it up.
When the Pando clone was discovered, scientists named it with a Latin word that means eye spread. Pando is an aspen clone that originated from a single seed and spreads by sending up new shoots from an expanding root system, according to the U.S. Forest Service.
They should have given him a better name. That's a creepy name. That's a demon's name.
Eye spread?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this like sort of a slime mold.
But it makes sense that we discovered it in a plant. So the word cloning, to jump around a little bit, was coined by an American plant physiologist named Herbert J. Weber in 1903. And he got the word clone from the ancient Greek word that was also clone, which meant twig, where we see cloning or propagation in plants really easily, where if you like break off part of a house plant at a node, or if you get, I don't know, like a twig, but you can't just get any twig, got to get something that's still living, stick it in the ground, stick it in some dirt, you can grow a new tree, you can grow a new plant. You're cloning it. And so it was first identified as a process in plants where you have one thing, you have a genetically identical second plant. And Herbert did a bad job at first and spelled it CLON, which it looks wrong. It looks gross. But because I think he was mimicking the Greek spelling, which was in Greek letters, like KLON, just clone. But in 1905, a different American botanist suggested clone with an E and plural of clones as the correct form of the word, because he also was like, no, Herbert, right. That won't do. That won't do in American English. Clon. We're going to go around saying clon, and that's even more scary and bad. Yeah. Clone.
It's very nice to see an example of a scientist being like, actually, we could do this better.
We can say it nicer. It wouldn't have taken root, I believe, in sci-fi as much if it was called clone also. Clone is such a perfect sci-fi
Clone Wars.
The Clone Wars. Begun the Clone Wars have.
So other things, as we found other things were genetic clones, then we started using the words to describe them. So plants, I think, were the first things that we kind of identified as clones, and that's where the word came from. In 1929, we started using clone to refer to bacteria. So the way that bacteria divide or bud off of each other asexually, produce genetic clones of one another. And then in 1982, we started using it to refer to animals. And the idea of how can we clone?
Is that what you said?
Yeah. How can we clone animals from one another? 1970 was kind of where it started in sci-fi of like hypothetically, could we create artificially produced identical people or aliens or whatnot? But it was theoretical. And then 1982, we were like, I think we're going to try this. I think we're going to try and make other animals.
Make a guy.
From animals. Yeah.
There are people now who have clones of their dead dogs, and that is not that unusual. And I think it should be.
You think it should be more? Well, yeah, there's a lot of dogs out there who need our help.
I don't know. It just seems like a lot of pressure to put on a dog to be like, I loved this dog, and now you are the literal replacement, and you must be like that. This new dog's going to be like, I'm not exactly that dog. I'm sorry.
And I guess this is like a big question, but do they have would your brain? Is there even a prayer your brain would work the same way if you were cloned exactly? Or
well, I mean, we got twins, so we know that these people are different people. Oh, speaking of, does that mean that twins are clones, but that cell cloned itself in the womb once time?
Yes, I will talk about this a little bit later in my fact off. But monozygotic twins are clones. They're identical twins are clones because one cell became two cells, and instead of staying as one embryo, they just split off into two embryos, and they start with the exact same genetics. Fraternal twins are two eggs fertilized by two sperm, so they have as close genetics as siblings would. But those identical twins are basically human clones, as ethically made as possible.
I would like to be a clone. I think that it would be cool to be twins. I think that in the future, this is a prediction. Everybody get ready. 40 years from now, people will pay to have twins. And they'll pay extra money to the doctor to be like, we want to have identical twins.
I would like to have a twin, but I wouldn't like to have a clone, like a new me clone, I suppose. But yeah, I think I don't know. No, I wouldn't like to have a twin. I think it would be harmful for me to see myself and to see just everything reflected back at me. I wouldn't appreciate that.
I don't need that. I'm enough in my own head as it is.
One of me is plenty enough. What if your clone was so much more successful than you? Wouldn't that just really suck?
But there's there's that like third Hemsworth, and that sucks for him anyway. It doesn't have to be a twin.
I guess if your brother or any family member is way more successful than you, that does stink. I take it back then.
So cloning also, I guess the one other meaning of cloning is what I did in undergrad, which is like molecular cloning or gene cloning that you generally use bacteria, but it is a lab procedure that you can use to make copies of genes or certain segments of DNA that you want to study. And that's just like what the procedure is called, because you take advantage of bacteria's ability to create genetic clones of itself, and you just create a bacterial genome, like a plasmid is specifically what it is, like circular DNA. And then you cut out a slice of the circle and you put in whatever gene you want in there. And then you put that genetic material into the bacteria, and then you let it multiply thousands or millions of times. And then you kill them all. And then you harvest their DNA. Wow. And then you filter out the gene that you want. And you say, thank you. Or you make them produce a protein. If you like, I don't know, if that gene produces a protein, then you can like feed them whatever ingredients they need to make that protein, have them synthesize a bunch of protein, and then kill them and then harvest their protein instead too. Bacteria really
they're getting killed and harvested no matter which way you slice it though.
Well, one thing you got to know about bacteria is you don't have to feel bad about killing them, and they were going to die anyway.
Okay.
And you do it in your gut, in your body. The circle of life is going on constantly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I know what cloning is, and I also feel like I know more than I did just a short while ago, which means it's time to move on to the quiz portion of our show. Are you guys ready?
Yep.
Yes.
Even if we humans have not figured out a way to clone ourselves, we spent plenty of time studying organisms that do clone themselves. And sometimes just because it's cool, and sometimes because it helps us better understand ourselves, because it's important to understand ourselves because we keep getting sick and we don't want to do that. So today, we're going to be playing Truth or Fail, Clone Edition. I will present to you 3 stories of a medical discovery, but only one of them is true. Which one is it? Story number 1. Marbled crayfish are crayfish that can produce hundreds of eggs at a time without mating, producing a population that is entirely female clones of the mother crayfish. A 2018 study found that these clone crayfish are also produce a protein similar to the prion responsible for mad cow disease, though it doesn't affect the crayfish, making it a useful model for scientists to better understand that disease. But that might be fake. So don't let it stick in your head for too long. It might be story number 2. Hemlock trees in the U.S. have been under siege by an insect called the hemlock woolly adelgid. In 2019, scientists reported that they had successfully cloned hemlock trees from frozen samples of emulsified bark. When they planted these cloned hemlocks, they were surprised to find that the overall population was more resistant to adelgid attack. They found that adelgids tend to avoid a preservative used during the cloning process, suggesting this preservative may make for a useful insect repellent. Or it might be story number 3. Many fungi can reproduce through sexual or asexual means, but there are some species that choose primarily asexual reproduction, including the fungus that causes athlete's foot. A 2018 study found that even when set up with other mating types for 5 months, this fungus would not sexually reproduce, and the researchers found that the samples were around 99.97% identical, making them almost exact clones of each other. So what is it? Is it the crayfish that's been cloning itself and might help us study prion diseases? Is it scientists envisioning a new insect repellent while cloning hemlock trees? Or is it that athlete's foot fungus rejects sex for cloning?
I don't know how you clone a tree.
The stick. You get a stick.
You do the stick.
It's right there in the name, Sari.
You're right. It's right there in the name. I said it, but
yes, clone means stick. After
Sari
all,
from
doesn't it?
Whatever 10 minutes ago is dead. I teleported here.
Yeah, I just think that one seems like something that Deboki. Sorry to to reveal the magic that Deboki writes these, that Deboki wouldn't click on this and be like, that's interesting. I think she'd make this up and be like, that's maybe interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, bark goo. Now that you've reminded me of what I said, what past non-clone Sari has said about twigs, bark goo sounds very suspicious.
What's the goo got in it? Nothing useful for us.
So the crayfish, I don't know how much crustaceans have centralized brains. They must have some sort of like centralized nervous system, right?
I mean, I'm Southern and I know that you can suck the meat out of the head of a crawfish and nobody ever says you're eating the brain of the crawfish. So maybe you're right.
So prion disease is what I know them. It's like mad cow disease is a prion disease. So it's like brain tissue, but I don't know if there's enough. Maybe it's like nervous system, whatnot, but I don't know. When I think of crayfish, I don't think of like, oh, there's like a brain disease going on there. Which is maybe speciesist of me to say.
That's rude.
It's pretty rude about the marbled crayfish.
What do you think about the third one though? That seems too weird to make up.
It seems really random that you would just study athletes. I don't know what kind of fungus athlete's foot is.
You'd be like, come on guys, start doing it down there.
They are very not into foot stuff.
They're chaste. Yes. Yeah. They hate being on foot. Big turn off for athletes.
They really kink shame foot fetishists. And they're like, no.
Wow. Just because that was so convincing. The crawfish one, crawfish sounds so familiar to me. That I'm going to kick myself for not picking that one, but I do think the athlete's foot one.
I also think the athlete's foot. I talked myself out of the crayfish one, which maybe I talked you out of it too.
Yeah,
so
I think we're wrong.
Who knows?
I'm sticking with it.
Well, in 2018, researchers published the result of a study on 135 samples of Trichophyton rubrum, which is the fungus responsible for athlete's foot.
Like
and they found 134 of the samples were of the same mating type, which was surprising. And when they tried to introduce the fungi to other mating types, they found that it wouldn't reproduce, except instead, they found that the species were almost exact clones of each other, suggesting that the fungus might be primarily clonal, just asexual reproduction. And they think that it became asexual relatively recently in the grand scheme of evolution because its genome is still about the same size compared to other fungi. If it had been asexual for longer, it would be more likely like a reduced genome. Also, it would be more dependent on humans. The fact that the fungus aren't genetically diverse could be good news, actually, for researchers looking to target athlete's foot fungus, because if you can find something that gets one of them, you get all of them.
That's what happened to bananas, right?
That's what happened to bananas, but we have to have it happen to our feet and elsewhere.
Just all the crevices.
So two points, one to each of you. In the case of the hemlock trees, scientists have been trying to clone hemlock trees thanks to these hemlock woolly adelgids, which inject toxins into the tree. Hemlocks are, of course, important ecologically because they keep stream banks safe from erosion and provide shelter for wildlife. One way scientists are working to try to address the challenge is to create hybrids of hemlocks with Asian hemlocks that are more naturally resistant to woolly adelgids and then clone those hybrids. As for the crawfish, the most interesting thing about marbled crayfish is that the species didn't exist until a few decades ago when a mutation in another species caused a female crayfish to be able to reproduce via parthenogenesis, meaning her eggs would develop into embryos without fertilization. Scientists think that marbled crayfish got their start with two slough crayfish that were imported from Florida to Germany. Despite being made up of just clones, the species of crayfish has been able to survive in all sorts of environments through Europe and Africa. And in 2018, scientists published a report on the genome of the crayfish. In a press release, the scientists suggested that the adaptability of the marbled crayfish may make them useful for learning about epigenetic mechanisms, which describe how chemical tags can turn on or off different areas of DNA. And in turn, they suggest that this might make the crayfish useful as a way to understand the development of how epigenetic mechanisms contribute to development of tumors.
So it's just like, I can do this now? That's just how it
goes. They can just do it now. And since they can, they are, because it's really quite quick to do if you can.
It's
but
easy.
In general, species like that don't last forever, because just like the athlete's foot, if one thing goes wrong with one of them, you can get them all.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next up, we're going to take another short break. Then it will be time for the Fact Off.
SciShow Tangents is brought to you by Rocket Money, a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. Hey, everybody. Nice to meet you. My name is Mr. Subscriptions, and as you can probably guess from my name, I love subscriptions. Every morning, I wake up in my subscription bed, take a big deep breath of that sweet subscription air, hop in my subscription shower and clean off with my subscription soap and my subscription shampoo, put on my subscription clothes, drink a cup of subscription coffee, and then it is off to subscription work, where I pay them to be at work. Because, hey, I love subscriptions. Then it's home again, where I take my subscription dog for a walk, cook a subscription meal, watch my subscription streaming services. Then it's back off to subscription bed. But sometimes, when I lay my head on my subscription pillow, I wonder to myself, do I need all these subscriptions? Am I ever going to use my subscription calligraphy sets, my subscription oven mitts? My subscription basketballs? I have so many of them. And then a small voice from deep in the recesses of my mind says, no, you don't. Get Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that lets you see everything you're subscribed to and cancel what you don't want with just a tap. And for me, when I look at what I'm subscribed to, it takes me 23 minutes to scroll through the whole dang thing because I'm Mr. Subscriptions. Rocket Money also helps you track your spending habits and helps you make budgets to keep your savings goals on track. I know everything I spend money on, and it's subscriptions. And I know everything that I save, and it's very little. So I'm going to look into this Rocket Money thing, I think. But if I do cancel my subscriptions, what will my new name be? Perhaps it will be Mr. Rocket Money. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's features. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/tangents. That's rocketmoney.com/tangents. rocketmoney.com/tangents. Tell them Mr. Rocket Money, formerly Mr. Subscriptions, sent you. SciShow Tangents is brought to you by Shopify, the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Sari, Hank, things out there are absolutely growing. They're flourishing. Grass, flowers, leaves, baby animals. So in the spirit of the season, can you guys think of some things that are always growing?
The universe.
Your fingernails?
Oh, gross.
Yeah.
That's gross. That is gross.
I'll tell you what's always growing. The cost of items in proportion to the value of dollars.
What about the power of our friendship?
Oh, the power of our friendship is always growing.
Always growing.
I'm going to have to cut you off there because after giving it much consideration, I came up with the best answer of all. Something that's always growing is businesses that use Shopify. From the tiny little seed that's planted when you open your online shop to the 1 millionth order when you step back, survey what you've done, and realize that your store is now a mighty oak. Shopify is with you every step of the way. With e-commerce and point-of-sale platforms, award-winning customer support, and the internet's best converting checkout.
And growing in the amount of sales you make is great, but Shopify helps you grow in lots of other ways too, with an endless list of third-party apps that give you access to things like on-demand printing, chatbots, and all kinds of tools that can keep your business tree blooming. Hank, how has Shopify helped your business grow?
Make it a metaphor about plants.
Imagine you had just had one. Like, do you know what Pando is?
Yeah.
The aspen grove. It's just like it was one aspen tree, and then it was like, I'm just going to send up a bunch of little aspen shoots. It's just like, one day you have like a seed and you don't want to have a whole aspen. You don't want to be taking care of a whole aspen grove. You don't have time. You're not able to do that yet. You want to be able to start small and plant a seed and be like, I have a single aspen seedling and I can manage this. I can handle this. And Shopify is great for just a single aspen seedling. But then, 800 years later, it's a whole grove, and Shopify is also great for that because like even a very old and storied business can absolutely find a way to like have their thing based on Shopify. It is extremely scalable because now it continues to be a thing that is super useful for me, even though we are a very different business than we were then.
Are you ready to plant the seed of commerce, your Pando, and nurture it with the warm glow of Shopify? You, too, can sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tangents, all lowercase. Don't you dare put a capital letter in there. Dig that dirt, plant that seed, and help your business bloom by going to shopify.com/tangents. That's shopify.com/TANGENTS, all lowercase.
Welcome back, everybody. Get ready for the Fact Off. Our panelists have both brought science facts to present to me in an attempt to blow my mind. And after they've presented their facts, I will judge them and award Hank Bucks to the most mind-blowing fact. But to decide who goes first, I have a trivia question. Humans have figured out how to clone a number of different animals, including cats. The first cloned cat was created in part by scientists at Texas A&M who used DNA from a female domestic shorthair named Rainbow and then transferred the embryo into a surrogate mother. 2 months later, the cloned cat named Copycat was born.
Oh.
But what year was Copycat born in?
Oh, sweet Copycat.
It is cute.
Yeah, that's really cute. You said that we shouldn't clone pets, but my cat's getting really old, and I just think I would like to have another go around with her. But I think calico cats maybe don't clone with the same spots. I feel like I've heard that before. Like,
that makes sense to me.
So she wouldn't be quite right. I'll just get another one, I guess.
Yeah, it's not really about what's in the mind. It's about the fur spots.
Yeah. I don't know who she is. Well, Sari said something about like the 80s.
Well, I think, do you want me to give you a narrower range?
No.
Please. Why wouldn't I want that?
I gotta help clone Sam out.
Okay, yeah.
So Dolly the sheep was in the 90s.
Okay. So the 90s is what the range you gave me is.
Or the 90s is the beginning, past the 90s.
Okay.
And you can help out Clone Sam because Clone Sam is going to have a totally different score from regular Sam. So this isn't going to count towards Sam's total.
Yeah.
No. I have to start all over again?
I don't know. If you bring regular Sam back, he can start back from his...
What if I bring back his head? Can I have all his points then?
Yeah, I think that's how it works. If you best one of us in armed combat, then you just get to be the co-host of the show, I guess.
Any of you. I get to kill any of you. Interesting.
Yeah, you're a clone, so you don't have any morals.
Yeah, it's like Highlander. I absorb all your points until I just have all the points. Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess first, and I'm going to guess the year 2000.
I'm going to guess 2006.
The answer was the year 2001.
Oh, yes. So close.
Sam gets to go first.
Great year to make a clone. This sounds so futuristic, doesn't it?
Oh, by the way, also I should say, Copycat went on to have her own kittens when she was 5 years old. And despite being a clone, Copycat was more orange than Rainbow, and their personalities also seemed different from each other. And Copycat died in 2020 at the age of 18.
Oh, wow. Good for Copycat.
It's a lovely long life for a little cat.
Okay, so the way most colony-based ants reproduce goes something like this. A colony has a queen, and that queen spends her time laying eggs that hatch into sterile worker ants. But sometimes the queen will lay eggs that hatch into winged female and male ants, which are capable of reproduction. These winged ants then fly out into the world. They meet ants from other colonies, and they mate. The males, pretty much it seems like break off their entire sex organ into the female that they mate with, and then they go off to die. And the female goes off to become a queen and populate a new colony by laying eggs fertilized with the sperm from the male ant's sex organ. So basically, the ants mate once, and the queen gets a lifetime supply of sperm to fertilize eggs, and then the whole thing starts over again. And as is often the way with sexual reproduction, the ants that come out of these eggs have genes from the male and the female ant. Not cloning at all, so not a very good cloning fact. But in 2005, genetic analysis of the little fire ant, aka the electric ant, a species of ant, I'm saying ant a lot, native to Central and South America, but found as an invasive species pretty much all over the world, revealed that these little critters buck the traditions of sexual reproduction in some weird and sort of rude ways. So researchers were doing some standard genetic research on electric ants, not expecting to find anything too weird because these ants live in colonies. They have sterile workers and fertile males and females who do the whole ant thing, go off to mate. But what they discovered was that the fertile female offspring of queen ants, the winged ants who one day will become queens themselves, were genetically identical to the queen that birthed them. These female ants were clones of their mothers, though they did use the male sperm to create the sterile workers, effectively leaving male electric ants out in the cold when it comes to passing on their genetic information. Poor little loser guys. Except when they took a look at the male ants, they discovered that the males didn't have any DNA from the queen ant either. The researchers found that when an egg that will hatch into a male is fertilized, the female DNA is somehow neutralized, and the resulting male ant is the result of only male DNA. So in effect, the gene pool of the male and the female ants of this species never mix, and every male and female ant born is a clone of its mother or father. So the researchers describe these ants as being in an obligate symbiosis at this point. So the females need the sperm from the males to create the workers to do all the stuff that workers do, like keep the queen alive. And the male ants need the eggs from the queen ants to make more little man babies. So it's sort of like two species of ant that just happen to hatch out of the same egg.
What the
and
heck?
of course, this is probably not very good for the genetic well-being of these little freaky guys, but they're a harmful invasive species that eats scorpions, spiders, native ants, and even baby tortoises on the Galapagos Islands.
Oh, no.
So fuck them. Who cares? They're little assholes.
Then maybe just like the fungus and bananas and
we're
the
getting rid
other
of these
thing we were
guys
talking
next.
about, we can kill them
Yeah,
more
soft
easily.
target.
That's very weird.
Isn't
How
that
long has it
crazy?
been like this? Do they have any idea?
No, they didn't know, but it seems so like, how did the male, it's not like the male ants were like, hey, wait a minute, I guess we better figure out how to make our sperm do this if you're going to do this to us. It just happened. But I don't know. They didn't know how long it's been going on like this for.
Whoa. The thing about this fact is that it feels way cooler to me than I feel like it would to an audience. Like
come on.
I'm just saying.
I'm an audience. It felt cool to be.
It's blowing my mind, but I think most people think like, oh, animals make babies in lots of different ways. And it's like, not really. Like,
Not
it's
this
mostly
Not this one.
just the one way once you get complex.
Sperm destroying DNA feels pretty weird. I feel like emphasizing that
That's
is
true.
weird for anyone.
It neutralizes it somehow.
Neutralizes.
It just says, you stay over there, I think. We're going to take care of things over here. Wasn't quite clear on how that exactly worked, and maybe they're not sure either because it's probably like teeny, teeny, tiny when it's happening.
The eggs, if the ants are little, the eggs are even littler.
They got to come out of the ant, so that must be the case.
Okay, Sari, what do you got?
So one of the ways that scientists try and study the age-old question of is something nature or nurture are twin studies. So when you have identical twins, aka monozygotic twins that came from a single fertilized egg that's split, you basically have two genetic clones. And the reasoning behind twin studies is that their genetics start the same, but there could be changes to biology based on environmental factors. So like the Scott and Mark Kelly twin study by NASA, where one identical twin brother was in space for a year and the other stayed on Earth. What was happening environmentally because their genetics were functionally the same. But how much of what we attribute to the environment or nurture are actually part of our genetics? A 2023 study looked into this sort of question with a freshwater fish species that is entirely made up of clones, the Amazon molly. So Amazon mollies are all female and reproduce asexually, but the specific process is extra weird because it's called sperm-dependent parthenogenesis. So maybe kind of more similar to these ants than different. Mm-hmm. Basically, they produce eggs that are full genetic clones, but they need to trick a fish from another closely related species, like an Atlantic, a sailfin, or a Tamaci molly, to mate with them, because the sperm triggers embryo development, even though it isn't genetically incorporated into the eggs at all.
What the hell?
So very weird. They're like, come have sex so that I can make full eggs, but then the eggs are just clones. And all that weirdness to say, they are a species of all-female clones. And in this 2023 paper, the researchers basically did a giant twin study of 34 genetically identical offspring of one Amazon molly over 280 days or 40 weeks. So after these 34 babies were born, they were separated into 34 identical tanks and monitored super closely with cameras. And they were found to, quote, exhibit strong behavioral individuality during the first 4 weeks of life, from how much they swam around to how much food they ate. And then the researchers moved them to 34 identical breeding tanks. I don't know, the tanks look, I think, just slightly different, with males. And then they swapped the females around randomly once a week to make sure that they weren't stuck with the same male. And this was a male of a different species, just to like trigger reproduction when they were ready to get down and dirty. And they monitored them closely to see how they reproduced, when in their lives, how many babies they had, and how big those babies were. And in the end, they measured 2,522 offspring from 152 broods of these fish. And some patterns that they observed sort of made sense. Fish that ate more food got bigger, and bigger fish made a bigger offspring and reproduced later in life. But there were also some mysteries, like how much food the fish ate didn't affect how many babies they had, just like how big those babies were.
How big the babies were.
Yeah. So bigger fish made bigger babies, but you didn't necessarily make more babies, which you
But they're all clones, even including the babies.
All babies clones. Yeah. All fish, all babies clones. The males are the only ones that aren't clones, but they're not even
the same species.
Yeah. How active they were, like swimming around their tanks, didn't seem to correlate at all with their reproduction or anything like that. So there's this whole question of where all these behavioral differences came from, and where all these like reproductive fitness differences came from. Because some of them seem like, if you're just talking about the biological need to continue your species forward, they have very different ways of doing that, even though they're clones with identical environments as far as the researchers could tell. So there's probably way more to genetics that we know about, whether it's tiny environmental influences or DNA modifications during development, or like where these sort of behavioral things come from, which is very weird.
It's things like this that make me very skeptical of anyone who's claiming that we're going to like fix big, complicated body problems in the next 40 years. People who think like the singularity is near. I'm like, the singularity is a long way away, you guys. We don't even know what's going on with these 2,000 fish clones. They're exactly the same, and they're all very different.
Yeah,
we have no idea why.
And they live the same exact life. Basically, they're just swimming around the same place.
They're all swimming around a tiny little tank in a tiny little lab, and they all got different little behaviors, different little food preferences.
Yeah, and they're simple. Mollies are a simple fish. I mean, fish are simpler than mammals anyway. But like, dang, there's a big gap between knowing a lot and knowing everything. I don't know. Maybe they'll fix death. That sounds great. Keep at it, you guys. I'm not saying you shouldn't try. I'm expressing my skepticism. So I definitely am in a situation where I think that it would be easier for a broad audience to get the Molly story. But I think that Sam's fact about these ants that are two separate clones is more mind-blowing. Like I am like, woo? So I think I'm going to go with Sam. Clone Sam, though.
I've been on a cold streak, so this feels pretty good. I mean, the other guy was on a cold streak. Yeah,
that's right. Episodes. You're hot.
Yeah, I'm smart, Sam. That's my thing.
Yeah, you're smart, Sam.
I've been.
And you know what will make you even smarter?
Yeah,
is when you go and eat his heart.
Yeah, and his brain. I was thinking his brain.
I don't know. For some reason, brain seemed grosser to me. I couldn't say it.
Well, I'm going to eat both anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're hungry. And now it's time to Ask the Science Couch, where we've got a listener question for our couch of finely honed scientific minds.
At Bell5734 on YouTube asked, cloning is always mentioned when discussing strategies for de-extinction. If we were to actually use it to bring back a species, wouldn't it create a genetic bottleneck since we have limited DNA samples?
It certainly would, unless we don't have limited DNA samples. Like I'm sure that there are some species we have more genetic information for, but then also you can do stuff. The thing is, like, you look around at American bison, and there's very few bison herds that don't have some amount of cow DNA in them. And so you can do stuff like that, where if you need to introduce genetic information, you can be like, okay, we don't have any more of this kind of rhino, but we have other rhinos. And so let's just like spice up their genes so that they're not all entirely super inbred by having some other rhino genes from other rhinos. But then, like, did you bring back that species or not? But we've already done some of this work where we have like, I think Przewalski's horse is where we've had, I don't know if we did cloning, but we did a thing where there was like a surrogate mother with Przewalski's horse. Like a normal horse gave birth to this rare horse as part of a captive breeding program where they're trying to, and succeeded to get them back in their native habitats. But I don't know. I'm talking about my butt here. So Sari, how'd I do?
Yeah, I think you're pretty spot on about both the genetic bottlenecking and the questions that you want to ask before you de-extinct anything and put in the effort. Because even cloning your dog is tens of thousands of dollars. It's really, really expensive and complicated to do.
I mean, that's expensive, but if I'm going to get a whole rhino out of the deal, it seems worth it.
Yeah, but it's many, many more, I think, hundreds of thousands of dollars, because we know how to do it in dogs.
We know how to do it. And also there's lots of dogs around.
There's lots of dogs around.
You can't put like a rhino baby inside a dog.
Yeah. Yes, you can't. And you have to put a rhino baby inside a rhino. And there's a lot of like science that goes into being able to. So the idea of cloning a rhino or a woolly mammoth or something. So you need to have the DNA that of the thing that you want to clone. And you can get that if you're talking about a rhino, like from one of the living members of the species. If you're talking about something that's already extinct, like a mammoth or a passenger pigeon or something, you need to collect that from samples preserved in the ice or museum samples. And maybe that's a complete genome, maybe it's incomplete, and you have to stitch it together. And so you have to basically come up with the animal's genome. That's like step one. And then you have to get a reproductive cell, an egg, to insert that material into. So the way that Dolly the sheep was cloned, the way that a lot of dogs are cloned, cats are cloned, a lot of animal cloning nowadays, in my understanding, is through somatic cell nuclear transfer. So basically that means somatic cells are non-reproductive cells. And so they take the genome from any cell. In Dolly's case, it was like a mammary gland. In the case of woolly mammoths, you've like extracted it from a corpse, a mummified corpse, and you have it. And then you need to find a way to extract elephant eggs. And that's not like a thing that we do all the time. Like we know how to do IVF in humans. We know how to do IVF in dogs at this point. We don't really know the best ways to sedate an elephant and stick a giant needle into its ovaries and extract eggs successfully from an elephant.
I can figure it out.
Hank's got it down. Well, we got to do that. And then you got to empty those eggs. You got to empty the nucleus from those eggs, stick in the genetics that you want to, and then successfully implant that embryo into the womb of an elephant, have it develop a baby, and then the baby has to come out. And then this like hybrid mammoth, I guess it'll be genetically a mammoth, has to learn how to be a mammoth from the elephants around it.
With no mammoths to help.
No mammoths to help it do. So they'll probably end up behaviorally kind of acting like an elephant if it survives. And then on top of that, you have to like do that multiple times and then introduce genetic diversity that way.
Yeah.
If they can successfully mate with each other and whatnot, or have it mate with elephants, and then you've got this like hybridized situation going on.
Can you imagine just sort of being like mad about it? If like the only woolly mammoth in a whole herd of elephants being like, everybody hates me and I hate everybody.
It's the ugly duckling.
I'm so hairy and they aren't hairy.
He's cool. Maybe they think he's cool, and they're like, yeah, if we have babies with him, our babies will have really cool hairdos.
Yes, I guess. Yeah, maybe it's like that. Give him some baggy pants. And
He's a grunge elephant. I'm just a grunge elephant.
Put him in a flannel.
But yeah, so I think there are many steps before the genetic bottlenecking. But then, yeah, you have to decide whether you want to repeat that with other mammoth genes and grow a bunch of different mammoths, or introduce elephant DNA, or I don't know, some other mysterious thing. And species have come back from pretty severe bottlenecks. Like cheetahs are notoriously pretty genetically similar because of a bottleneck around 10,000 years ago. They barely avoided extinction at the end of the last ice age, and now they're really, really genetically similar. And that isn't being helped by poaching and whatnot. And so species have naturally bounced back from genetic bottlenecks. But the worry of those things is like bananas. If there's a disease that they're all susceptible to, they can get wiped out pretty easily. So then you have questions around strategies for de-extinction of, is it even worth it? Is it even worth all the time and money and energy poured into conservation to de-extinct something through cloning when you could focus on maybe cloning an organism of an existing population?
Right.
So like taking cheetahs that already exist and like helping with conservation efforts. If you can clone a cheetah that can introduce genetic variability in the population, and like what would a mammoth be doing in the elephant ecosystem? Maybe he's like a cool dude who all the elephants want to hang with. Maybe he's a menace and he kills all the elephants.
Their enemy. Oh no.
And then we've got a bigger problem on our hands where we've de-extincted mammoths and we've extincted elephants.
Oh no.
Because he was a bad dude. And then, so I don't know, consequences of our actions, all the sci-fi questions.
But it's not sexy to just clone a boring old cheetah. It's sexy to clone a mammoth, you know?
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like they're the sexy animals. They're they call them charismatic animals,
right?
Because they want to keep it.
You can't call them sexy animals. I understand.
You can. The can is but should we?
Charismatic's so funny. It's like they're hanging out at a bar or something though. It's like that animal has a great personality.
But like big mammals, elephants and mammoths and ferrets are all charismatic animals. A lot of mammals. We like mammals because we're humans. Yeah. But when possibly some of the more impactful species that we could de-extinct are certain insects or fish. But it's like harder to get funding for de-extinction of birds or fish or insects when everyone's like, oh, that elephant, that hairy elephant, that would be cool.
You need him back.
Well, I'll tell you, one thing I feel like I've learned about billionaires in the last 10 years or so is that if they could figure out how to bring back woolly mammoths and make like a park you can go to and drive past woolly mammoths, they will absolutely do it.
Yeah.
Like they're gonna do it.
We've made so many movies that say, don't do this. They
yeah,
don't care.
And they're like, like what I have learned from this exercise in trying to instruct humans to not be so hubristic is everyone would pay attention to me if I brought back woolly mammoths. And they talk about me on the news. Yeah. And that's the one thing I can't buy.
Then they talk about me getting stomped on by one of my woolly mammoths.
Yes. You got to get injured. You got to get gored by a mammoth tusk. Mm-hmm. You can get on that Wikipedia page that's people who are killed by their own inventions. If you want to ask the Science Couch your question, you can follow us on Twitter at SciShow Tangents or check out our YouTube community tab where we'll send out topics for upcoming episodes every week. Or you can join the SciShow Tangents Patreon and ask us on our Discord. Thank you to at Knits and Laughs and at Fellofhe on Twitter and everybody else who asked us your questions for this episode. If you like this show and you want to help us out, super easy to do that. First, you can go to patreon.com/SciShow Tangents, become a patron, get access to our Discord and our bonus content. Also, like our Minions commentary. Shout out to patron Les Aker for their support. Second, you can leave us a review wherever you listen. That's very helpful and it helps us know what you like about the show. And finally, if you want to show your love for SciShow Tangents, just tell people about us. Thank you for joining us. I've been Hank Green.
I've been Sari Riley.
And I'm Sam Schultz now.
SciShow Tangents is created by all of us and produced by Jess Stempert. Our associate producer is Eve Schmidt. Our editor is Seth Glicksman. Our social media organizer is Julia Buzz Bazzaio. Our editorial assistant is Tiboki Chakravarti. Our sound design is by Joseph Tuna Medish. Our executive producers are Nicole Sweeney and me, Hank Green. And of course, we could not make any of this without our patrons on Patreon. Thank you. And remember, the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be lighted.
But one more thing. The Portuguese man-o-war looks sort of like a jellyfish, but it's a siphonophore, which is actually a colony of genetically identical but specialized clones called zooids. Siphonophores are sort of like nature's version of three kids in a trench coat working together as one unit to survive. So some of those zooids help the colony float in water, some help it reproduce, and some, called gastrozooids, help it digest food. So basically, gastrozooids are gut clones, which probably work as mouths and butts too. Or at least they're close enough to butt clones, given how weird and hard to study these creatures are.
I've never understood a Portuguese man-o-war.
Other jellyfish aren't like that, right? It just looks like those guys. But
there are other things that are like that, but they aren't that way like that, where they're like the different like elements of it are so differentiated.
Right.
If you look up siphonophore, most of them look like long and tubey and live in the deep ocean. The weird thing about the Portuguese man-o-war is it looks super like a jellyfish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also stings super like a jellyfish.
Mm-hmm.
I can attest to this, having
got him
experienced it. Yeah.
You have?
I have in Florida.
Wow.
It was very, very painful.
I thought those are one where you get
happy.
to die.
Yeah, I thought they punched your ticket. That was it.
No, I didn't punch my ticket.
Okay.
I think you can survive a Portuguese man-o-war sting having done it. I don't know how often they punch your ticket.
No, it says it's rarely deadly to people. It packs a painful punch and causes welts on exposed skin.
You're not so tough.
I survived something that is rarely deadly. Twice.